The gavel fell with a thunderous crack, and in that single moment, history seemed to shift. A towering fine, $500 million, was hurled against Jasmine Crockett, a woman known for her fiery courage and relentless defense of justice. Many believed this would silence her forever, crush her career, and bury her under the weight of the system. But what happened next turned the courtroom into a storm of shock and disbelief. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a test of dignity, resilience, and the fight for equality in America. The courtroom was heavy with anticipation that morning. Every eye was fixed on Jasmine Crockett, the Congresswoman who had become a lightning rod for truth-telling in the halls of power. Her critics saw her as disruptive. Her supporters saw her as fearless. Judge Thomas, a figure who carried himself with the stern authority of the old guard, presided with a glare sharp enough to cut stone. The stakes were enormous. Crockett had stood up against entrenched systems that too often silenced voices like hers. Her boldness had drawn enemies from the highest places, and this trial was no accident. It was the culmination of years of friction, tension, and quiet, battles waged in back rooms of power. As Judge Thomas read aloud the staggering fine of $500 million, gasps swept through the chamber. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, and whispers rippled like wildfire. To many, this ruling symbolized something bigger than money. It was a punishment meant to break her spirit, to send a chilling message to anyone who dared to speak truth against power. Yet Jasmine didn't flinch. Behind her calm composure was the weight of generations, a history scarred with injustice but never fully broken. What she was about to do would leave the nation speechless. For a moment, silence clung to the walls like a suffocating fog. $500 million, a figure designed to intimidate, to humiliate, to obliterate. For most, such a fine would mean the end of everything. And that was exactly the intention. Judge Thomas had built a career on wielding his power like a weapon, often at the expense of those who challenged the status quo. But Jasmine was different. She had endured storms before. Growing up in a country where systemic inequality was woven into everyday life, she had learned early that silence was complicity. She carried the scars of countless battles fought in courtrooms, on the streets, and in the halls of Congress. The press wasted no time. Headlines blared across every platform. Crockett hit with historic fine. The ruling was painted as justice served, as if her boldness had finally caught up to her. Yet beneath the surface, millions of Americans recognized the deeper story. This was not about legal technicalities. It was about silencing a black woman who dared to stand unapologetically in her truth. The rising tension wasn't confined to the courtroom. Across the nation, conversations ignited. Supporters rallied, in outrage, seeing the fine as an extension of centuries-old tactics used to suppress voices of dissent. Critics smirked, believing this would finally put an end to her influence. But Jasmine, even under the crushing weight of the ruling, refused to play the part of the defeated. She gathered her breath, every movement deliberate. The courtroom waited, the judge towering from his bench, expecting perhaps tears, regret, or silence. Instead, Jasmine stood taller. The moment was no longer just about her. It was about every unheard voice, every silenced story, every unjust penalty delivered to those who dared to fight back. The air grew charged. People leaned forward, sensing something seismic was about to unfold. And then it happened. With steady eyes fixed on the judge, Jasmine delivered a response that no one expected. She didn't raise her voice, nor did she crumble under the crushing fine. Instead, she revealed a truth so piercing, it cracked the carefully built facade of power before her. Her words were not of defiance for defiance's sake, and they were a reminder of history, of pain endured and resilience carved from stone. She spoke of how fines, punishments, and barriers had long been used to control and destroy communities like hers. And yet time and again, those communities rose back stronger. Every sentence cut deeper than any legal ruling could. Judge Thomas, so accustomed to his authority going unchallenged, sat frozen. His expression shifted, from arrogance to unease, from command to vulnerability. In that moment, the courtroom witnessed something extraordinary. Power trembling. Before truth, gasps echoed. The reporters, once relentless in their scribbling, paused mid-sentence, stunned by the raw power of her presence. By the time Jasmine finished, the silence was no longer heavy with intimidation. It was reverent. The judge's gavel, once a symbol of finality, suddenly seemed powerless against the tide she had unleashed. For the first time, it wasn't Jasmine who looked small beneath the weight of the fine. It was Judge Thomas who seemed shaken, diminished. The ruling still stood on paper. $500 million, a number almost impossible to fathom. But what Jasmine left behind that day was something no ruling could erase. Her response became a spark, igniting conversations across living rooms, classrooms, and communities. People weren't just talking about the fine anymore. They were talking about justice, about who gets silenced, and about the courage it takes to stand when everything is stacked against you. Videos of the courtroom moment spread across social media like wildfire. Hashtags trended, voices rose in solidarity, and a new wave of energy swept through those who had grown weary of the system's weight. Her response was more than a comeback. It was a blueprint for resistance. As for Judge Thomas, he could not undo what had been spoken. His authority might have delivered a financial blow, but his composure cracked under the force of Jasmine's truth. The man who had once seemed untouchable now found himself remembered not for the fine he imposed, but for the day a black woman's courage exposed his frailty before the world. The story was no longer just about money, or a courtroom, or even two individuals. It was about something larger, the unbreakable spirit that refuses to be silenced. And so, the question remains for all who watched, all who listened, all who felt the weight of that moment. When injustice rises with the force of power, will we cower, or will we, like Jasmine, rise and speak until the very walls of silence tremble?